Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. More people are probably going to join us. So once again, my name is Pamela, and I'm the Director of Product Support at CommonLit, as well as our Google Classroom Manager. And today we're going to be talking about CommonLit and Google Classroom's integration with one another and how you can use Google Classroom within CommonLit to improve your CommonLit experience. So just a few webinar norms as we get started. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see 3 buttons. If you'd like to ask our team a question during the webinar, please click Q&A. You can use the chat function to introduce yourself to one another, but we will not be answering questions in the chat. We will only be answering questions in Q&A. So please post those there, and one of our specialists will get back to you. If you ask a question we're about to answer in another section, they might say that we're answering it live. And there's no need to use the raise hand feature at all during this webinar. A few more things. We are recording this webinar. We are sending a recording of the full webinar out to everyone who signed up. We do ask for a few days to get all of our materials to you. So with the holiday weekend, you might get those materials next Tuesday or Wednesday. We just want to make sure we have everything together for you that you need. Our training slide deck today is for teachers and administrators, and when we're sending out our follow-up email, we'll include this training slide deck. We'll also include a special slide deck just for people training others on our Google Classroom integration. We'll send out a link to the Chromebook App Hub for CommonLit, and a few other helpful links that'll help you make the most of our Google Classroom integration. Great. So with those norms out of the way, here's a look at our agenda today. We are going to introduce the Google Classroom integration on CommonLit. We're going to go over 4 key points of that integration, and those points are 1, single sign-on with Google; 2, using Google Classroom to roster your classes and students on CommonLit; 3, we have a light sharing feature we're going to go over; and 4, we have a full Classwork and gradebook integration that we're going to go over, which goes beyond that light sharing we're going to talk about briefly. So the key points today are going to be point 2, rostering, and point 4, that classwork integration. And then finally, I'm going to speak to a couple of common questions and troubleshooting emails that we get. All right. Then at the end, we'll end with some questions. Of course, you can ask questions throughout in Q&A as well. We have a team of specialists ready to answer them. So just a brief background on who we are, if you don't know. We at CommonLit are a nonprofit organization, and we operate CommonLit.org, which is an award-winning, research-based, free literacy program for students in grades 3 through 12. And our free reading program will always be free for teachers, and that does include our Google Classroom integration that we are talking about today. So our free library has over 2,000 lessons, and that includes 500 in Spanish, and the rest are in English. And each lesson comes with a high-quality reading passage as well as some lesson planning resources. That includes standards-aligned assessment questions and some technology tools that will help support all learners at all reading levels. So a little bit about us and Google Classroom. We have integrated with Google Classroom for over 3 years now, and we've been an official Google for Education partner for over 2 years now. We're very happy and proud to work with Google Classroom, and we are also proud to be featured in their popular Chromebook App Hub. So Amanda will share out a link to that in the chat, so you can check it out. We'll also share out that link again in our follow-up email. So what is so special about CommonLit's Google Classroom integration? Throughout the webinar, I'm going to use the term GC to refer to Google Classroom just to save time. So when I say GC, I mean Google Classroom. So with GC, we give both educators and students a great user experience. At CommonLit, we believe in making technology simple and easy to integrate into your classroom. We want to give you powerful tools, but make them easy to use. And we found that with Google Classroom, it's easier to roster your students, to share your CommonLit assignments with them, and to grade and store those assignment scores in your Google Classroom gradebook, especially if CommonLit is just one of a couple of ed tech tools that you're using every day. We find that Google Classroom can help you seamlessly integrate CommonLit into your daily or weekly routine. So if you're new to CommonLit, here's just a brief overview of what our GC flow looks like. And we're gonna go into these points individually one at a time, but I just kind of wanna lay out for you what the order of events are with our integration. So first, a teacher imports their classes and students from Google Classroom, and you can see that on our screenshot here, when they are creating their classes on CommonLit. And by doing that, they then enable our Google Classroom Classwork integration. So then the next step is when they create assignments in CommonLit, they post those assignments to Google Classroom using our integration technology. Students then see the assignments in Google and can click on them to get to CommonLit, where they are prompted to log in using Login with Google. That's Google SSO, or single sign-on. So they can use the link in Google Classroom to then log into CommonLit using Login with Google, and I'm going to show you that today. Students then take their assignment on CommonLit and submit them, and teachers grade them on CommonLit. And then CommonLit will send those scores and those progress updates back to Google Classroom. So in Google Classroom, you can easily keep track of who has submitted, who's been graded, what their total scores are. So that's our basic flow that we're going to go over today. So like I mentioned, we have 4 main points of integration with Google. So the first one we're going to talk about is Google Single Sign-On. So Google Single Sign-On makes CommonLit easier to use because it provides a safe, secure sign-in for students and teachers through Google. So here you can see a screenshot of our login page. We'll go into the site in a little bit and you'll get to see this as a student, but we have this login with Google option. And the nice thing is any student or teacher with a Google email on their CommonLit account can log into CommonLit using this Login with Google button. So the beauty of Google SSO is it's actually totally separate from our Google Classroom integration. You don't have to import your students from Google for them to use Login with Google. All you need is your teacher account or the student's student account has to have a Google email on it, and you can use this button. The nice thing though is when you do import your students from Google, we automatically import them with their Google emails, so that enables this Login with Google button for them. So the nice thing about our integration with Google Classroom is it ensures all your students have Google SSO enabled from the start, and they don't have to sign up or do anything to enable that themselves. So that is our first point of integration, Google Single Sign-On. All you do is click Login with Google and you enter your Google email and your Google password. All right. Moving on to our second point of integration. This is our roster integration. So the beautiful thing about rostering with Google Classroom is we will automatically import all of the classes and students you've created in Google Classroom, or if you want just some of the classes, you have flexibility to choose what you want to import. And then this, like I just mentioned, ensures all your students in those classes can use Google Single Sign-On. And then finally, this import process enables that Classwork and gradebook integration that we're going to go over a little later in the webinar, which is where you can post assignments and scores to Google Classroom. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into CommonLit and show you what this looks like. All right, so here I am in CommonLit, and I am logged in as a demo account today. I already have a Google Class set up here, but what I've done is I've kind of cleared out the account, so we're going to start from scratch. I do want to point out on the account, I am using the email t1@cl.org. That's not my actual email in Google Classroom, sorry. So my email in CommonLit, my school provides me with 2 email addresses, and this is one of them, and I used it to sign up with CommonLit, but that's actually not my email in Google Classroom. That's totally fine, because when I go to connect to Google today, it's gonna ask me what Google account I want to connect to. So the way we do this is after you sign up or log into CommonLit, you go to your Manage Classes page here. You can find it by going to My Classes, Manage Classes. That's it right here. And then we're going to click Create a New Class today. So we click Create a New Class, and we see 2 options come up. Create a new class manually or import classes from Google Classroom. You guessed right, we're going to click Import Classes from Google Classroom, and you can see here there's a little heads up that students will be automatically imported, that this enables single sign-on, and it enables that Classwork integration. So I'm going to click this button here, and then it's going to ping Google. And it's going to say, well, what account do you want to connect with in Google, right? Because I've disconnected this account from Google, so we're starting fresh. So here I see I want to log in with t1@commonlit.org. Like I mentioned, that email doesn't match my CommonLit email, and that's totally fine. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So I'm already logged into this account in Google. It might, if you're not logged in already on your browser, ask you what your Google password is. And now I have a permissions screen. So what does this mean? We get asked this sometimes. You see 6 different permissions laid out here. And we have a reason for each one of them. They all relate to the features I'm going to show you today in our webinar. But essentially what you're doing is you're granting us permission to import your students, to import their emails, which enables our single sign-on, to update your roster. So say you delete a student in your CommonLit roster, we say, hey, do you want to delete them in Google as well? And you can do that. And then the other 3 permissions are related to managing your stream and your classwork. So we are able to create announcements, create assignments, and we're able to say, hey, Google, can you tell us what data is in Google to make sure that we're always in sync. We want to make sure our assignments and our Google assignments are always matching. So that's what these permissions mean. I also manage our student privacy at CommonLit. So if you ever have questions about these permissions, I'm happy to answer them at help@commonlit.org. But basically all the permissions here directly relate to features we're going to go over today, and we won't take any action on your account without your permission. So I'm going to say allow. And now it's going to fetch what classes I have available to import from Google Classroom. So there's 2 classes here. I've already imported one test class, so I don't see it here today. So I just see ones I haven't imported yet. I want to import both of these classes, so I'm going to click both of them. But I could import just one if I wanted to. Say I had a math class I didn't want to import, I could leave that out. So I'm going to say I want to import both and click next. Okay, so now I see some information is being requested about these classes to finish importing them. So I'm actually in 2 schools here, so I'm gonna import these into Eastern High School today. And then it's asking me what grades I want. This is a high school, this is a 9th grade class. Even if my students are reading below grade level, I still want to say they're 9th grade students. And you'll see here there's a little message, we don't limit what kind of content you can assign students. So if my students are reading at a 7th grade reading level, I still want to say they're 9th graders. That helps us at CommonLit make sure that all of our items are fair and on grade level. So it's helpful for us to know if 9th graders are reading below grade level, above grade level, and to get that information, we want to make sure you select the grade level and not the reading level here, and it will not affect the content you can see or assign. Next, we're going to select our subject areas. You can select as many as you want. So let's say this class here, class 2, it's an ELA class, but I have some ESL students in it. So I'll say English as a secondary language is also a subject area that applies. I'm going to say next because I'm importing 2 classes. For my next class, same school. Maybe this is a 10th grade class. Maybe it's 9th and 10th graders. You can have multiple grades selected if your class does have multiple grades in it. I'll say it's another 9th grade ELA class here, and then I'm going to click import here. All right, so I got a success message. That's awesome. So I know that the classes were imported from Google. I'm going to say OK. And now I get a screen with some directions about importing students. So it says CommonLit is importing my students now, and my students can log in using the Login with Google button. Well, just in case I forget that, I see there's some instructions here, so I'm going to click that, and it's going to open a new tab. And what I see is I'm going to get a Google Doc, and this Google Doc is going to have login instructions for my students. And I can actually post these login instructions into Google Classroom for my students. And that way there's no questions for them the first time they have to log in. So I see the same thing here, and I will go over the login experience as a student in a little bit, and I'll show you what it looks like to log in on the platform, but I just want to go through it briefly here. So I can see it says to go to our login page and click the Login with Google button. it says the first time a student logs in, they might see a Your Account Needs Updating page, and they'll be prompted to select a grade level. We only show this if you select more than one grade on your class. So if you say, oh, this is a 9th and a 10th grade class, we might ask students, are you a 9th or a 10th grader the first time they log in? That's totally normal. They might not see that screen though if you just have one grade. Then they're going to be directed to a page that the teacher wants the student to connect to Google Classroom. And that is the same thing we just went through as a teacher, where we gave our permission to have Google and CommonLit connect. We have the same experience for students where we ask for their permission to connect. So they click that button, and then they'll be directed to their My Assignments page. And this is just the first time they log in. They get a couple pages where they have to make sure their accounts are up to date. And then every time they log in after that, they click login with Google and they'll go straight to their assignment or to their My Assignments page. So we'll go over this again in a little bit. If it felt a little fast, don't worry, you'll see it live in just a moment. But I did want to point out that these instructions here are freely available for you to post. Just go ahead and make a copy when you get them. Make a copy, you can edit it if you want, and then you can post that into your Google Classroom. So I'm going to go back to my Manage Classes page. I have my download. I say done. And now my page is going to refresh, and I'm going to see these 2 new classes here and my students as well. And let's say I lose track of that sheet. I can always go to Options, Add Students, and I can click that button to get that sheet back with those login instructions. Something else I know on this page, there's some instructions here again, log in with Google, but I also see some information about adding students. So let's say it's week 3 of classes and a new student joins my class in Google Classroom. Now, Google doesn't repeatedly send us updates every day. We have to go say, hey, Google, do you have any updates for us? And so we do that with students in our roster with this sync button. So if I press this sync button, it's going to go say, hey, Google, do you have any new students for us? And if they do, then Google will send us those students. So I know in test class 1 here, which I already had on the page, I know there's actually 6 students in this class. So I'm going to go ahead and click sync because I want to get that 6th student into my class. So it's syncing, and I get this message that my students and any co-teachers maybe that are set up properly, which we'll get to in a moment, will be updated shortly, and I should refresh my page after a minute or so. So I'm gonna go ahead and click refresh on my page, and I'm gonna see if I see a new student. All right, awesome. I see now I have 7 students instead of 5, so I've added new students to this class. Again, all I did there was I clicked the sync button. You can also go to add students and click the sync button there. It's the same button, doesn't matter. I do want to point out during back to school season, sometimes a lot of teachers are importing students at the same time, and Google only lets us request so many syncs in a minute. So you might have to wait a few minutes to see your students appear, but we promise we're importing them. So you don't need to click sync if you're just importing your class for the first time and you don't see your students yet. We promise they're coming. Okay. If there was, for any reason, a student who did not get imported, there's a few reasons why their data might be messed up in Google and we don't import them. We will email you to let you know, hey, we did not import Andy Apple because his data needs to be corrected. Here's more information. So if you see a couple students are missing, you can check your email and see, did I get an email from CommonLit letting me know that a student was not imported? Check your spam folders too. Sometimes our emails go to spam, but we'll be sure to share that information with you. All right, the last reason a student might not get imported is if you invite students to join your Google Classroom, say you invite them via email, they have to accept that invitation. We can't import them until they accept the invitation. So you can always figure that out from your people page on Google Classroom. So if you go to one of your classes and you click people, you can look at your students, and if it says invited, that means they haven't accepted the invite yet. So I can see all my students here are in the class, they accepted their invite, and I see those 5 students all listed here. And if I go into my class, I can see that their emails are here so that they can log in with Google. And I also see these little green icons, which means they were imported from Google. And that means they're connected to Google and they have that Classwork integration set up for them and ready to go. All right. So that is it for importing classes and syncing them to add students in. So the next big thing I want to go over is co-teacher. Before I do that, I want to flag, when you're importing from Google Classroom, some different districts have different privacy policies about joining a new third-party integration. Make sure you know your district's policy about sharing student data. Make sure that you're following all of the guidelines from your district for sharing data with CommonLit. We do on our security page here have some resources for you, which Amanda will send out over the chat, and that includes a letter for families about what CommonLit is, and a sample parental consent letter. So if your district policy is to get parental consent to use a third-party integration like CommonLit, you can do that before you import your classes from Google and share student data with us. So Amanda will send that out in the chat for you now. All right. Now, I think we're ready to talk about co-teacher. So I'm actually really quick gonna go back to our screen here because there's some information about co-teacher I want to go over. So there's two ways to add a co-teacher on CommonLit to a Google Classroom class. The first is you can do it using sync. So when you click sync here, you can see it does say we will add your co-teacher as long as that teacher already has a CommonLit account. So here I can see I have a co-teacher on this class. I'm the primary teacher on it. And if I click options, manage co-teachers, I can see here, I'm Felicia, Pamela here is my co-teacher, and I can also add a co-teacher by syncing them, or I can invite them. And if I invite them, what it's gonna do is it's gonna send them an email with the class code, and it's gonna say, hey, go ahead and sign up or log in and use this class code to join my class. So let's say I invite Amanda as a co-teacher on this class, and I say update. She's gonna get an email saying to join the class. It's gonna have this class code. She can copy it, go to her manage classes page and say join class as co-teacher. She can enter my class code. Oops, sorry, didn't copy it, the class code there. If she copies the class code here and pastes it in, and click submit, it'll send a request to me as the primary teacher, as that class owner, and I can approve her request to join the class. So that's the easy way to join a Google Classroom class as a co-teacher. That same method, by the way, works for classes that aren't Google Classroom classes. You can see here, I can do it for this non-GC class as well. The second way to add a co-teacher is using the sync button. So we will add co-teachers to CommonLit using the sync button, but they have to have their data set up in a certain way. So that's what this slide here talks about. There's 4 things we need from our co-teacher to make sure that sync adds them as a co-teacher. The first is they have to already be a co-teacher in Google Classroom. The second is they need to already have a CommonLit account. So we imported students earlier, but we actually don't import your co-teacher. We just import students. So if your co-teacher doesn't have a CommonLit account yet, we're not going to create one for them. And that's partially because when you sign up, we ask you a bunch of questions that we want to make sure we have that data on hand about how you plan to use CommonLit as a teacher. So they need to have access to the class in Google. They need to have a CommonLit account. They need to be in the same official school in CommonLit as the primary teacher is. So I have this class set up at Eastern High School. So Amanda needs to also have an account in Eastern High School. And you can have multiple schools on your account. So if you teach in multiple schools, that's not a problem. And then finally, Amanda, let's say I'm inviting Amanda here. She needs to have her CommonLit account already connected to Google. So the way you connect your account to Google is what we just showed you when you go to import a class. So importing classes from Google, or even just trying to import a class, even if you don't import any, is how you connect to Google. So all you need to do is get to that permission screen and click allow, and we can connect your account to Google. Sometimes co-teachers go, well, I don't need to import classes from Google because I'm just a secondary teacher on all my classes. So it doesn't occur to them to do this final step, so sync doesn't work, and that's fine. They can just use the join classes co-teacher option in that case. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to remove Pamela as a co-teacher for this class, and I'm gonna sync it. I'm gonna see if it adds her. I think Pamela has connected her account to Google. I know that she has an account and she's in my school because she already was a co-teacher on this class. I'm gonna refresh and see, oh, there she's back now. So that sync did add Pamela back as a co-teacher on my class because her data was already set up in CommonLit. She was in my school, she had an account, it was connected to Google. All right, so that's it for co-teacher. I did remember one thing I forgot about students, which I'll say before I take questions about rostering. So our sync button adds students who join a class. I want to point out sync does not remove students from your class. If you remove a student from your class, it's going to delete all their assignment data. So we don't want to delete your data without you being warned. So if you want to remove a student from your class, you can go into the class and you can delete them manually by clicking this trash can icon. And we're gonna warn you, are you sure you wanna delete them? You can merge them, we're gonna delete all their data. So we wanna make sure you have all those warnings. So sync does not remove students, it only adds new ones. You have to remove them manually. Okay. That is it for rostering. We're about halfway through our webinar and we've gone through the first 2 points of our integration. I'm gonna take questions in just 1 second. I just wanna throw in one more warning here. If you're an administrator or you're a trainer and you wanna train your colleagues on how to use Google Classroom, sometimes trainers will import a class from Google, like a PD class, a professional development class full of all their colleagues. That's actually going to create student accounts for all your colleagues, and it's going to tie up their emails with a student account, and they're not going to be able to go sign up for an educator account. So I want to advise against doing that. So one more time, the warning is if you're a trainer, you're training your colleagues on how to use Google, use the slide decks we're going to provide at the end of this email. Don't just go ahead and import a professional development class of all your colleagues because it will import them as students and it's going to make it a lot harder for them to get started. So that is all I have to say now on rostering. Amanda, do we have any questions from Q&A so far?
No, you're doing great, and everyone is sending their questions to Q&A, which is awesome. We are just here standing by, so you can keep going.
Awesome, thanks so much. All right, I'm gonna go back to my slide deck now. And I'm gonna talk about our third point of integration. And this is our light sharing feature. So I'm not gonna spend too long here because this feature actually won't be used by you that often if you import your classes from Google Classroom. So there's a really easy way to share your assignments to Google. A lot of our other ed tech companies that we know about use this light share option. We offer a more fully integrated option, which I'll go over next. So you only get this option on classes that were not imported from Google. So if you import your classes from Google, you're not going to see this option to post an announcement for most of your assignments. You will see the option to post an announcement for a pre-assessment if you have access to the pre-assessment on your account. And if you create an assignment without any assessment questions or scores to share, you might see the option to post an announcement instead of an assignment. Posting an announcement, when you click that, it actually pulls up a Google window and it goes, hey, log into Google, pick your class, type in all the information. And all we do is we send Google an assignment link from CommonLit. So it's not actually connecting the two assignments in CommonLit and in Google. All it's really doing is passing a link over to Google and you have to do the rest of the work. So that's why it's called a light share assignment feature. And again, if you import your classes from Google, you won't see this too often. So I'm not going to go into more about it now. Just know if you have Google and non-Google classes, you might see this option on your non-Google classes, or you might see it on a pre-assessment. All right, so the final point we're going to go over of our integration is our big Classwork and gradebook integration that we have with Google. So this is how we connect assignments between CommonLit and Google, and this lets us track student progress and student grades in Google Classroom. So it's very exciting. Here you can see this share assignment window. It says post assignment and doesn't say post announcement because this is our more advanced integration. So the announcement was our light share and the assignment is our heavy lifter here. So we're going to go over to CommonLit and check this out and see it live. All right, so I'm going to go to my assignments page. Okay, and I'm in Google Test Class 1 here. I'm going to go ahead and click Add Assignment. And today I think I'm going to assign Fame is a Bee. It's a really short, sweet poem by Emily Dickinson. For the sake of our webinar, it's super short, which is why I'm assigning it. Here we go. And I'm going to assign it to all 3 of my Google Classroom classes. So I can see a couple of options here, and this applies to all your CommonLit assignments, not just Google ones. So I can customize this annotation task. It says, as you read, take notes on what happens in each line. I could edit that if I wanted to. And that's going to alter the directions students see within CommonLit on their assignment. So next I can enable guided reading mode. This is an extra set of scaffolded questions students answer as they read. And I can do it for the whole class or just for some students. So I'm just going to do it for test student 1 today who needs a little bit of extra support. Next, I have my assessment options. So I can choose to assign all of the assessment questions, only the multiple choice, only the short answers, or no assessment questions. Say I just want to do an essay that I'm working on or a creative project, maybe I'll say no assessment questions. Today I'm going to assign them all. There's only 3 on this text, it's quite short, but I do have the option to customize there. And then finally, I can say when the start date and the due date is. So the start date is a feature where if I set a start date of today, students can see the assignment right away. If I set the assignment with a start date in the future, students won't see that assignment in CommonLit until the future. Same is true on Google Classroom, and we'll go over that in a little bit, and I'll show you what it looks like. But to start, let's just say the start date is today, and we'll say the due date's next week. And I'm going to click Assign here. Okay. So now I see this share assignment window, and I can see I successfully assigned this assignment to my 3 Google classes. And I see that each one actually has its own assignment link. That's because these links do vary for each class. So I could go old school and copy this link and go create an assignment in Google and paste it in, but that wouldn't actually be a linked assignment. It wouldn't send scores to Google. It wouldn't keep student progress updated in Google. What does that are these 2 Google options here. So this is our Classwork integration. This is how you set it up. So you can choose to post your assignment to Google Classroom, and that will link the assignment, and we will send scores or send those progress updates to Google. A progress update just means, did the student turn it in? Were they graded? Did they get unsubmitted? So tracking where they're at in the progress of their assignment. Both of these options do that. I can choose whether or not I want to send my scores to Google. So this first option here will send the assignment and my scores to Google Classroom. The second option will not send my scores. It'll just send the progress that students are making. Did they submit, etc. So the nice thing about this is we have a feature on CommonLit that I'll show you in a bit called release scores, and students never see their scores until you release scores on CommonLit. So if I want my students to eventually see their scores in Google Classroom, I'm going to pick this first option, but I know that I still have that release scores tool to decide when my students see their scores. If I do choose this option to just send the assignment and not my scores, I can change my mind later and send scores later, But if I know I'm going to eventually send scores, I'm going to go ahead and choose this first one here. So I'm going to choose post assignment and scores to Google. And now I see that I have a Google Classroom post ready for me. So that light share assignment, I'd have to fill all this out manually, but with the full integration, CommonLit fills this out for me. It says, oh, hey, here are the classes that you assign this to. We'll post it there. Here's your assignment title. It's a CommonLit assignment, so they name it that. Here are the instructions we're going to send to Google. It includes the due date. It includes some directions for students to click the attached link to the assignment and to log in with Google. So you don't see that attached link, but we always send that assignment link over with it. I can customize these instructions and students will see these custom instructions in Google. So remember in the previous slide, the annotation task are the custom instructions you see in CommonLit. These instructions are the custom instructions you see in Google. So I might tell my students, watch the attached pre-reading video before taking the assignment, before reading the assignment. Okay, and so finally we have the start date and the due date. They're synced between CommonLit and Google, so I can't edit them. And I see because there's a start date of today, it warns me this assignment will post to Google Classroom immediately. So if I'm like, ooh, actually, I don't want to post until next week, I could go change my start date and reopen that share assignment window and choose to post it again. So I have kind of a stopgap here if I realize I've made a mistake and I don't want to share just yet. So now I'm going to click share, and it's syncing that assignment over to Google Classroom for all of my classes. So while it's sending that over, I just want to point out, you can always reopen the share assignment window right here. So if I have an assignment, I can just click this share window and it's going to pull up my share assignment window again. If I've already posted it to Google, I can't post it again because we only want to have one assignment speaking with each other over in Google. All right. So now I'm going to go check out my Google Classroom class. All right. So we post to your stream and to Classwork. And I can see here Fame is a Bee is appearing in my stream. If I go to my Classwork, we actually don't integrate currently with topics, but I did set up CommonLit assignments as a topic in this class. So I can edit my classwork and I can add a topic to it to help organize my classwork. So I can say this is a CommonLit assignment. Here I can see that title and those custom instructions that I sent from CommonLit were ported over. In CommonLit, we don't currently support editing the point value. So we don't let you edit the max points in Google from CommonLit when you're posting it. We always send as 100% or a percentage of 100. And so here I also see that I can add some stuff in. So this is really exciting. I want to perhaps share out these login instructions with students. This is their first assignment. They've never logged in. So I'm going to click share. And remember, if you're doing this, you want to make a copy of the original file before you share it. I'm going to copy that link. And I can post that here on the assignment. I could do Google Drive if I saved it there. I'm just going to say it's a link. And I'm going to add that link. And now students can see these Google Classroom student account setup instructions. I can attach other things too. So remember I said I wanted the students to watch the attached pre-reading video. So that pre-reading video, let's find Fame is a Bee. And we're going to go look at the text in the library, and we're going to look at the planning resources in the library. Oops, sorry, trying to get the webinar thing out of the way here. There we go. And let's look at it in the library. Like I said, it's a very short text, but here I do have some resources. So I have my related media page. So I could say I want my kids to watch this video. So I'll just right click here and say copy link address, go back to Google, and I'm going to add that link in. You can also just click right from YouTube. I'm going to say add link, and now I've attached the pre-reading video for my students as well. One more thing I could attach if I wanted to, over back in CommonLit, I have on the text, my discussion questions. So if I click discussion here, and I click this red play button, I can see that there's some downloadable discussion question resources here. So I could download those, and I could also attach them to my Google Classroom class. I'm not going to do that, but it is an option to you. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. And oops, sorry. This is just a little permission thing. So this is why you want to make sure that you make a copy so you have the right permissions. So I'm going to go ahead and click save now. So if you make a copy of those sign-up instructions, you'll have the permission to share them with students. And then it saves, and when students go to access it, they'll see those resources. So I'm going to switch over now as a student. And I can see, if I refresh my stream, I can see here fame is a bee. I would also see it in my classwork as well. So as a student, I can click on this assignment, and I can see that pre-reading video that I can go watch, and I can go directly to the assignment. So I'm going to switch over to the student experience. I'm going to log out as the teacher because I want you to see the student login experience now. All right. So as a student, when I click on this assignment link, first, it's going to take me to the login page. So this might look familiar. We went over this earlier. I want to click on login with Google, and it's going to say what Google account do I want to connect to. So I'm going to say I'm student test 1 here. And now we're getting that permission screen. So this permission screen is important. I actually, as a student, can't take an assignment that's been posted to Google Classroom until I grant permission. And the reason we set that up that way is because if a student took an assignment without granting us permission, we wouldn't be able to turn it in for them. So when I connect, it's letting CommonLit turn in my assignments for me in Google Classroom. So I'm going to say connect, and it's going to say what Google account do I want to connect to. So I say again, this S1 account here. And then I'm going to get a permission screen. And this permission screen is much smaller than the permission screen we saw earlier for teachers, because we only really need, as a student, to manage their coursework, to turn their coursework in, and to maybe get some notifications about how their data is getting updated. So I'm going to say allow. All right, and now I've been redirected to my Assignments page. So that's just the first time I log in after being imported. Anytime after that I log in, when I click that link, it'll say log in, and then it'll direct me directly to that assignment. So it's not my general My Assignments page, it's taking me right to Fame is a Bee. So I say got it, and I'm gonna go ahead and answer my questions, and I'm just gonna answer these willy-nilly here, not real answers. And when I'm all done, I can submit my assignment. I want to point out we have a couple of accessibility tools. You can learn more about that in our resources on our FAQ page, but students can read aloud, they can translate, and they can highlight a text. I'm going to go submit my assignment. And now I've submitted it. So I'm going to log out as a student now, because I'm going to have to log back in as a teacher to grade those. But I want to show you in Google Classroom, it's going to change from assigned to turned in. So you just saw it turned the assignment in for the student. And if I check as the teacher, and I click on Fame is a Bee, I can see one student has already turned it in. They don't have a score yet because I haven't graded in CommonLit yet, but I can see that this student 1 turned it in. And now I'm gonna go log back in to my demo teacher account to grade it so we can start sending those scores over to Google Classroom. So logging back in as my demo account here. All right, and I have a little notification, probably that I have something to grade. Fame is a B, great. I could also grade if I went directly to my assignments page and I clicked on that test class and I went to the assignment, I would find it too, but the notification's a nice shortcut. So I see I have 2 questions here that I have to grade. So I'm gonna give the first question here 3, and I'm gonna say you need to provide feedback for full points. This feedback's optional, I don't have to leave it. So let's say this was a 4 out of 4. I could just give them a 4 and not give them any feedback. And then I'm all done, and it's prompting me to go to the assignment report where I can do some item analysis. And I can also release scores from here. So on the assignment report, I see this little check mark, which means scores for this assignment will be shared with Google Classroom once they're released on CommonLit, and I could change that setting before I release scores from the assignment dashboard here over on the left. So now if I go look again in Google Classroom, I can see that there's a draft grade here, this 58.33, that's the draft grade. The draft grade means the students don't see the grade yet, it's not the final grade. So I could change their grade in CommonLit and it would update the grade in Google. So if I went back to the grading page and I changed one of those grades from a 3 to a 2, we would update that draft grade in Google. So let's say I'm ready to go and submit these scores to the student. I just want to point out again, as the student, I don't see that draft grade here until my teacher makes it a final grade by releasing scores on CommonLit. So from my assignment report, I have the option to unsubmit before I release scores. Say I want the student to redo question 2 and provide evidence. I could unsubmit and they would see it was unsubmitted in Google and they could submit it again and revise question 2. And we would update the status in Google accordingly. But I think this student is ready to see their scores. So I'm gonna say release scores. And now we're going to send that final grade to Google and we're going to mark it as graded in Google Classroom. So the student's going to go from turned in with a draft grade and they're going to change to graded with a final grade. We're just waiting for that update from Google while we send it over. And as the student, they're going to see that change too. Great, so there it is. The student went from turned into graded with that final grade. And now as a student, if I go check it out, I see it's graded. And if I click into it here, view assignment, I would also see that final grade here. Now, it's a good time to point out this whole process, we never sent a PDF to Google. We never sent the individual reading passage or the items to Google. We just made it seamless to transition between Google and CommonLit. So now as a student, if I wanted to know how I did on each question, if I wanted to see my feedback on short answers, I could click that assignment link again and log back in. I forgot I'm logged in as a teacher right now, so that didn't work. So let me log out as a teacher and do that again as a student. So you'll notice as a teacher, when I click the assignment link, it doesn't take me to the assignment, it takes me to the dashboard because I'm a teacher, not a student. I don't have an assignment to go to. So as a student now, I'm gonna click that. It's gonna ask me to log in as a student. Gotta double click every time. Slow delay there. So now it takes me back to my assignment again, except this time I see my scores and feedback. So I can see what my teacher said, what they didn't say, and I can see my final score there as well. But I could get that individual feedback on each item. So that is how you can seamlessly move as a student between Google and CommonLit. So I'm gonna real quick go back to CommonLit and point out a few more things about our integration. I do wanna be considerate of your time. We have about 10 minutes left and I do wanna answer questions. Once again, forgot I'm still logged in as a student here, so let me log back in as a teacher. So I mentioned earlier, when you create an assignment with a start date in the future, we don't send it to Google right away. So I'm going to show you what that looks like real quick. When you create an assignment with a start date in the future, we schedule it to post to Google Classroom. I'll say that again in 1 second when we've loaded the page so you can see it as I go. When I create an assignment, let's do, waiting for my texts. Let's do I'm happiest when most away. Sorry for my slow computer here. Ooh. Very slow computer right now. Sure, let's do can we cultivate our own happiness? And if I post this with an assignment date, let's say it starts next Monday, and the due date's next week too. It has a start date of next Monday, and I say assign. When I say I want to post this to Google, I get this little warning, this assignment will post to Google Classroom on the start date. So this assignment is not going to go to Google as a draft today. There's a few reasons for that, but the main point is we want to always keep your Google and CommonLit assignments in sync with one another, and it's hard to keep a draft in sync with CommonLit. But what we do is we, in our system, say, hey, on 9/7/2020, right at the start of the day, go post this to Google. So when I click share, that assignment is scheduled to post to Google on the start date, and my students won't see it in Google till then, and I won't see it in Google till then either. If I edit my start date here, it'll edit the date that it posts to Google as well. So we're gonna keep that in sync with one another. And if I click share again, I'll see that I'm a little reminder here that I have scheduled it to post to Google on its start date. Two more things I'm just going to quickly point out. We don't currently integrate with individual small group assignments. So if you create a small group assignment for just one student, we actually don't let you post it to Google. And we don't know if we're going to integrate with that anytime soon, but I can see here I can't send that to Google Classroom. I could copy the link though, and I could go to Google, manually create a small group assignment for that student, and I could attach this link to it. So that's the way you can work around that. And the last thing I want to point out is if you create an assignment with no assessment options, you say, I don't want to assign the assessment, I just want to have annotations. So from Blossoms here, we can see doesn't have a grading page because I didn't assign assessment questions. When I click share, I actually can't send my scores to Google Classroom because there are no scores to send. So then I see the post announcement option instead. Okay, I think that is all I want to go over. I'm just double checking here. So I've released scores, students have seen it. Yep, I think that is all I have. So I have some common questions that I'm going to go over at the end, but I want to pause and see if there's any questions from Amanda. As a reminder, what we've gone over today so far is we synced our class rosters from Google and imported our students. We enabled single sign-on for our students. We went over posting and editing assignments, sharing them to Google, and how we grade and send those scores to Google. Any questions, Amanda, before I get to our final few slides here?
Nope, just a time check. We have about 2 to 3 more minutes left, so I think you can get right to these questions and then we can wrap up.
Amazing. These are pretty quick questions here. So we get asked, is the Google Classroom integration free? Yes, it is part of our free platform. We're not going to charge for any of the features that we went over today. All you need to do is create a teacher account for free and then choose to import your classes from Google to set up this integration. Sometimes we get asked, why do I reauthorize Google Classroom? So once you import a class from Google, you'll see this reauthorize button appear. You only need to use that if you reach out to the help desk and we tell you to. It's usually if you don't see your assignments posting to Google or you don't see your scores being sent correctly. It's possible that the permission you granted us expired and reauthorizing just grabs permission again for us to interact with Google on your behalf. So then you would reauthorize just to get that integration going again. Some people say if I didn't share my scores, if I chose that second option to not share my scores and then I changed my mind, can I change my mind? Yeah. So you just go to your assignment dashboard. One more time, that is right here. So I could click dashboard from the assignment. And you go to your dashboard and you'll see this option to export scores to Google Classroom. All you do is hit that toggle and change it to yes. And then once you release scores, we'll send the scores over to Google. Once you release scores, you can't change the from yes to no, but you can always change from no to yes. If you've never shared the assignment to Google and you click this toggle, it's going to ask you, hey, you have to post to Google in order to enable this sharing scores. Okay, we get asked, why didn't my assignment post to Google Classroom? Most likely that assignment has a start date in the future. So you can always check that from the edit assignment window. We'll always tell you what the start date is. And if you see it's in the future, as a reminder, it'll post to Google on the start date. If the start date has already passed, that's a good time to reauthorize Google Classroom to make sure your integration is still connected. We get asked sometimes, oh, my student just logged in for the first time and they're being asked to set a backup password. It says your account needs updating, choose your password. Why do they need a password? All users have a backup CommonLit password in case Google single sign-on ever had an outage. Say Google was down and your kids need to get into CommonLit. We randomly set a unique backup password for them, but if they need that backup password, you can reset it from your Manage Students page by clicking this reset button, and they can log in with CommonLit using their email and their CommonLit backup password. So if they're being asked to set a backup password, it just means that a teacher of theirs, you or another one of their teachers, has reset their password, their backup password, and it's saying, hey, make this a strong, unique backup password. Last question I think we have here, if you delete your assignment from Google by mistake or because you get confused and CommonLit doesn't let you post it again, people say, well, how do I repost it to Google once I've deleted it from Google? You can reach out to us at help@commonlit.org and we'll unlink that assignment in CommonLit from Google, and that will let you post it back to Google again. All right, that is it. Those are common FAQs. Teachers and parents, if you have questions, you can reach out to us at help@commonlit.org, and I and some people in our Q&A today will respond to you. If you speak Spanish, you can ask questions at ayuda@commonlit.org. And administrators, if you'd like to roll out CommonLit in your school or district, you can reach out to us at partnerships@commonlit.org. As a reminder, we're sending out this slide deck as well as some other helpful training materials to everyone who attended this webinar along with the recording. If you liked this webinar, let us know. You can spread the word about us on social media at CommonLit. That's all I have. Amanda, do we have any final questions to close out today?
Nope, we are all good. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll be in touch via email soon.
Thanks everyone. Have a good day.